Okay, I want to set up a sheet pretending like the default way that it's set up isn't exactly what you need. And I'm going to do that just using an example. This is the concepts spreadsheet, so everything's organized by concepts. And you can see that this is polynomial multiplication, polynomial addition, polynomial subtraction, and this is a combination of add, subtract, multiply. And I'm going to pretend like there's 2 questions on polynomial multiplication, 3 on polynomial addition, and then 3 on subtraction, and then just 1 combination question, and show you how I would set up all of the sheets to accommodate for the CFA. Now, right here, I would advise you from ever having just 1 question per concept. I want to show you, just in case you do, what you would do to kind of accommodate, but you'll see why. Alright, so for polynomial multiplication, there's 2 questions. The first thing I want to do is set up my conditional formatting. So I highlight this column of cells, and I'm going to just keep dragging all the way until the bottom. And what I first want to do is go to conditional formatting, and I want to clear rules from that, not from the entire sheet. I want to clear rules from the selected cells. And then I want to go back in and set up a new rule. And I'm going to set up a 3 color scale. All of these need to be set on number. And since this little range of cells that is polynomial multiplication has 2 questions, if you get 0 right, I want that to be red. 1 right, I want it to be yellow. And 2 right, I want it to be green. I hit OK. And that sets up 1 is yellow, 2 is green, 0 is red, so on and so forth. But you'll also see up top the associated BAP values aren't set up correctly. That's because the way they were set up is below was 0, approaching was 1 and 2, and proficient was 3, but that's if you are having 3 questions on for that concept of the CFA. So I'm going to change below to a countif function. I'm going to say equals countif, and I want it to count the range of cells from G7 all the way through 202 or something like that, I think is where it ended. Yeah, 202. Scroll back up to the top, right here. And for that range of cells, the criteria is I want you to count it if it's a 0. And we should only have 1 right there. And we do. And then I could copy and paste this function into the approaching area. Notice the range is the same. It's the condition that needs to change, and that is you're considered approaching if you get 1 correct. And then I want to paste it here as well, but this is if you get 2 correct. And so now if if this student gets 2 out of 2 correct, that's going to add 1 to our proficient. If this student gets 1 correct, that's going to add to our approaching, and then this will add to our below. And so I keep this process up. I change the conditional formatting and the BAP levels for each low area. If I now go and I highlight all these cells down to 202, kind of where the grid lines end, scroll back up. Now I want to clear the rules from the selected cells and set up a new rule, change it through a 3 color scale, change all of these to number. But for polynomial addition, apparently we have 3 questions. So now I'm going to set it up to where the minimum is 0. I put the midpoint at kind of 1.5, or you could just put it at 1, or you could put it at 2. It doesn't really matter. It's just not going to be green quite yet. So I'll put it at 2, and you'll see that kind of in between is green. So if you have a 1, that's somewhere between 0 and 2, and that's an orangish color, and then the maximum is going to be 3. Set that up. So now, if I enter in a 0, that's red, a 1 is going to be orange, a 2 is going to be yellow, and a 3 is going to be green. And now I have to edit these BAP values. So actually, I believe I can highlight and paste these, and you'll see that the range changes accordingly. So now it's J7 through L202, and that's the range that we want. However, the criteria also changes because proficient is no longer 2. In this concept, for addition, since there's 3 questions, proficient is 3. And approaching is not just if you get 1 correct, it's also if you get 2 correct. So I'm going to copy and paste this function again, throw an addition symbol in between them to add 2 things together, and the criteria is 1 or 2. Since polynomial subtraction is the same way, if I copy and paste these right here, it'll change the range to the correct area, or to the correct range, and then the criteria is exactly what we need it to be. But I also need this conditional formatting to be the same. So one thing I could do is I could take one of these cells, because this cell is conditionally formatted to where 3 is green, 2 is yellow, 1 is orange, and 0 is red. I can take one of these cells, copy it, and paste it to all of these cells, all the way down to 202. And now it's going to be conditionally formatted the same. A 0 is red, a 1 is orange, a 2 is yellow, and a 3 is green. Now, over here, the combination is where the combination of all 3 of these, processes in math is where we said there's only 1 question. So I'm going to put in A inside of the yellow BAP level, the approaching level, because we're not going to be able to use it here. Which also means in this concept of combination, which is the 4th concept, I have to put NA here on the all data sheet as well, because we won't have percentages there. And here's why. If I go back to the Teacher 1 tab, if a student gets 0 correct, that's below, and if a student gets 1 correct, that's proficient, since there's only that 1 question. So there's not going to be any approaching levels. So here's what I can do. I can highlight all of these cells, conditionally format it by first clearing the rules from those selected cells, anything that I've preset. I'm going to go and make a new rule, and I'm going to make a 2-color scale where the lowest number is 0 and the highest number is 1. And if I can make this red and I can make this green so that it matches the rest of it. Now I can see a 0 is there, a 1 is green. And if it bothers you that they're different colors, of course you can edit that as well later. Now, I need this percentage to below to be a COUNTIF function. Count the range of cells. If we get a 0. And then I need proficient. I need this thing out of the way. I need proficient to be a COUNTIF function saying, I need you to count it. So I'll type this one in, COUNTIF, and the range of cells starting from P7 all the way through R. 202 is where we've been ending, and I need you to count it if it's a 1. And so now that cell is set up. So now when I edit the All Data tab, each one of these concepts, if this was the poly multiplication and this was, I believe, the polynomial addition, and if this was the polynomial subtraction, and this was the combination of all 3, I'm going to have to set these up differently. When I go to polynomial multiplication and subtraction, since there were 3 questions, or addition and subtraction, since there was 3 questions for addition and subtraction, then the way that I set it up in the other video on how to set up the All Data tab will work. But when it comes to the combination problem or the multiplication problem, since there's only 2 questions, it changes. So I'm going to set up the combination part of the spreadsheet just to give you an example. The percentage below is going to be a fraction. It's going to say COUNTIF. And I want it to count, and I need to put the equal sign. But I want it to count the range of cells for Teacher 1 in multiplication, sorry, not multiplication, rather Teacher 1 from this range of cells. since this is the combination problem. And I'm going to put a comma because now my criteria is, well, if it's a 0, we consider that to be below. Oh, and you can see it popped up a message that there was an error with the formula. It's the fact that teacher 1 was printed twice. So that's a good thing to see. Alright, and like I said in the all data video, I need this to be the numerator of a fraction, and the denominator needs to be all of the possible cases, and that is the sum of the following values. That is, we'll count the function, count the number of students who got a 0, and then count the number of students who got a 1. And then this will set up my percentage. If I take this value and I multiply it by 100, it'll put it as a whole number. I hit enter. And now I want it to round that value. So now I take this function and I'm going to replace the equal sign with these two pound symbols so that Excel doesn't change the function's arguments. I'll copy this and paste it into Proficient. And the numerator just changes to the value 1. And we'll see if my function works. And there it is. And so now I just need to copy and paste these to teacher 2, teacher 3, teacher 4, teacher 5, all of the teachers so that they have the same setup with the combination. For polynomial multiplication, I believe it was, can't seem to remember now. Yes, since there were 2 questions, I would do something similar, but then I would have an approaching function to put here. So this is an example of how you could set up your spreadsheet from scratch if the way that it's defaulted set up, or it's set up by default, isn't sufficient for what your team is doing on that specific CFA. So I do hope this helps.